The research vessel Empirical Mind drifted silently at the edge of the Sol system. Its silver hull absorbed rather than reflected light, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Inside, the Sarkozian crew moved with purpose, through curved corridors lit by a soft blue glow. Jirval stood before the main observation window, 4 slender arms clasped behind his back. His pale skin had the faint shimmer of someone who had lived nearly 300 years. The small planet, called Earth, hung like a blue marble in the distance. 200 cycles of research, Jirval said to his assistant Treller, and still these humans confuse me. Treller, younger and more energetic than his mentor, tapped rapidly on a transparent data pad. The Galactic Council was clear lead. Researcher, we observe only, no contact. I am aware of the protocols, Jirval replied. His large eyes, with pupils that expanded and contracted like camera lenses, focused on the distant planet. But how can we truly understand them from such a distance? The Sarkozians had studied thousands of intelligent species across the galaxy. Most followed predictable patterns of evolution and development, but humans were different. In a mere few thousand years, they had gone from simple tools to space travel. It was unprecedented. The probability models are failing again, called out another researcher from her station. Human behavior continues to defy statistical prediction. Jirval nodded unsurprised. This was why the Council had sent them. Humans were an anomaly, and anomalies made the Council nervous. Captain Myra Jones yawned as she stared at the monitoring screens on Deep Space Station Horizon. The station orbited Neptune, Earth's most distant major planet. Her job was to watch for unusual activity in the outer solar system. Most days that meant watching ice and rocks float through the darkness. Another exciting shift in the books, she muttered, reaching for her coffee mug. The cup froze halfway to her lips as an alert flashed on her screen. An energy signature had appeared just beyond Neptune's orbit. It was faint, but definitely not natural. Alan, she called. Are you seeing this? Alan Brooks, the communications officer, swiveled in his chair. He was younger than Myra, with bright eyes and a curious mind that made him perfect for the isolation of deep space duty. I'm picking up something weird, he said, adjusting his headset. Some kind of transmission, but the pattern doesn't match anything in our database. Myra moved to his station. Asteroid reflection? Sensor glitch? Alan shook his head. Too consistent. And listen to this. He removed his headset and turned up the speaker. A series of pulses filled the room. They had a clear pattern, not random, but not immediately recognizable either. The station AI is trying to decode it, Alan said. But whatever it is, it's not from Earth or any of our ships. Myra felt her heart rate increase. After years of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, humanity had found nothing. Many had given up hope. But now, Captain, the station's AI announced, I've analyzed the transmission. It contains mathematical sequences that cannot be coincidental. This appears to be an attempt at communication from a non-human intelligence. The room fell silent. Alan looked at Myra, his eyes wide. Protocol says we report this to Earth Command and take no action, Myra said slowly. That's right, Alan agreed. They'll send experts. We just monitor and by then whoever sent this might be gone, Myra finished. She stared at the energy signature on her screen. It hadn't moved. What would the first explorers do? Alan smiled slightly. They'd answer. Myra took a deep breath. Let's send a response, something simple. The same mathematical sequence but with an added element they would recognize as intentional. Alan nodded and began working at his console. Sending now. Either we're making history or we're talking to space dust. Aboard the Empirical Mind, alarms began to sound. We've been detected, Treller exclaimed, looking up from his console in disbelief. The humans have sent a direct response to our scan. Jirval moved quickly to the main control panel. Impossible. Our stealth systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. Nevertheless, said the ship's navigator, they've detected Usin sent a mathematical sequence in response. She displayed the human transmission on the main screen. Kirval studied it with growing interest. They didn't just repeat our sequence, they extended it, showing they understand the pattern. He turned to the crew. This changes everything. We should retreat, the security officer suggested. The council was clear that we avoid direct contact. The council also wants information, Shirval countered. And now we have a unique opportunity. The humans have reached out first. Treller looked worried. But our mission is to understand humans, Shirval interrupted. And we now have a chance to do so directly. He moved back to the observation window, looking at the distant Earth with new interest. Prepare a proper response. We will need to inform the council, of course, but first, let's see what these humans have to say. On Horizon Station, the response came faster than anyone expected. Captain, they're answering. Alan's voice cracked with excitement. And they've added a new sequence. I think it's a form of binary code that translates to coordinates? Myra leaned over his shoulder. They want to meet. The station AI spoke up. Captain Jones, I must remind you that first contact protocols require— I know the protocols, Myra interrupted. But history doesn't remember those who followed protocols. It remembers those who took bold steps. She straightened her uniform. Alan, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence and we're establishing communication. Alan grinned as he began typing. Think they'll fire us or give us medals? Probably both, Myra laughed. The tension in her shoulders eased. Slightly. This was what she had joined the space service for. Not to stare at rocks and ice, but to explore, to discover, to connect. In the darkness of space between Neptune and the distant stars, two civilizations reached toward each other, for the first time. Neither fully understood the other. Neither could predict what would come next. The Sarkosians, with their logical minds and ancient civilization, thought they were the teachers coming to study a young, unpredictable species. The humans, with their curiosity and courage, thought they were making their first step into a larger universe. Both were wrong, and the truth would change everything. 6 months had passed since the first contact. The world had changed in ways few could have imagined. After weeks of careful communication, the Galactic Council had agreed to establish a neutral meeting point. They built a space station in orbit, between Earth and Mars, designed to accommodate both species comfortably. Today was the first day of the official cultural exchange program. 5 humans had been selected to represent Earth, chosen for their expertise and steady personalities. Dr. Edward Clark adjusted his uniform as he stared out the shuttle window at the approaching station. It looked like a giant metal snowflake with 6 arms extending from a central hub. Amazing, he said quietly. As a xenobiologist, he had spent his career studying the possibility of alien life. Now he would meet it face to face. Beside him, Commander Olivia Wright remained silent, her eyes carefully noting every detail of the alien structure. Her military background made her naturally cautious. "Do you think they're as nervous as we are?" asked Professor Sam Bennett, an expert in linguistics and anthropology. His job would be to learn the Sarkosian language beyond the basic translation programs they had shared. "I doubt it," said Engineer Zoe Martinez with a small smile. "They've been meeting new species for thousands of years. We're just the new kids on the block." Greg Phillips, the diplomat, looked up from his notes. "Remember, whatever happens in there, we represent all of humanity. Let's make a good impression." The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. After a moment, the airlock door slid open. Shirval stood with his team in the central meeting chamber. The HFY room had been designed with both species in mind, half with the curved flowing architecture the Sarkosians preferred, half with the more angular human style. "They're here," Treller said, his voice showing more excitement than was typical for their species. "Remember," Shirval cautioned his team, "humans are unpredictable. Their emotional responses may seem random. Do not take offense." The human delegation entered, and Shirval noticed how they tried to hide their surprise at seeing the Sarkosians. It was understandable. With 4 arms, reflective skin, and eyes that could change size at will, his people looked very different from humans. "Welcome," Sirval said, using the translation device at his throat. "I am lead researcher Sirval. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we welcome humanity to the wider community of intelligent life." The human diplomat stepped forward. "I am Greg Phillips. On behalf of Earth, we are honored to meet you and eager to learn." The formal introductions continued, but Sirval was already observing the humans carefully. Their faces showed so many tiny expressions changing constantly. How did they communicate with such chaos? Over the next few weeks, the 2 groups settled into a routine. Each day brought new discoveries and new confusions. The Sarkosians were puzzled by many human behaviors. When Sam told a joke, they stared in confusion at the resulting laughter. When Zoe became angry at a misunderstanding, they were startled by her raised voice. When Edward showed excitement over a scientific discovery, they found his enthusiasm puzzling. "I do not understand," Sirval said to Edward one day in the research lab. "You claim to be a logical species, yet you respond emotionally to data." Edward smiled. "Emotion and logic aren't opposites for us. They work together." "Inefficient," Sirval commented. "Maybe," Edward agreed, "but very human." In his private quarters, Sirval reviewed the day's observations. He had created a program to model and predict human behavior, but it kept failing. When the simulation predicted the humans would react with anger, they often responded with humor instead. When it predicted caution, they sometimes showed curiosity. "Computer, run simulation series 12 again," he instructed. The holographic display showed a scenario where resources became limited. The program predicted humans would compete aggressively with each other, but in the actual experiment they had shared and cooperated. "Fascinating," Sirval muttered, "and concerning." A soft chime indicated someone at his door. It was Trelor. "The human engineer Zoe Martinez has invited me to what they call game night," Trelor said. "Should I accept?" Sirval considered this. "Yes, it may provide useful insights. But be careful. Remember to collect the biological samples as planned." After Trelor left, Sirval sent an encrypted message to the Galactic Council. "Humans continue to defy predictive models. Recommend extended observation period. Their unpredictability makes them potentially dangerous if misunderstood." Dr. Edward Clark couldn't sleep. Something was bothering him about the Sarkosians. They were polite, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about humans. But he had noticed something odd during their shared meals. The Sarkosians always collected the used cups and plates themselves, refusing help from the human staff. Edward decided to follow his hunch. He went to the lab and ran tests on his own coffee cup from that morning's meeting. The results made him frown. Microscopic collection devices had been attached to the cup, gathering skin cells, saliva, and fingerprints. "Computer, check the medical bay logs," he said. "Have the Sarkosians been scanning us during our examinations?" "Affirmative," the computer replied. "Brain activity has been monitored and recorded during all interaction sessions." Edward's frown deepened. The agreed protocols allowed for basic medical monitoring, but this went far beyond that. They weren't just talking to humans. They were studying them like lab specimens. In the recreation room, Zoe taught Trelor how to play chess. She found the young Sarkosian more open than the others, more willing to try new things. "I don't understand the purpose," Trelor said, examining the night piece. "The rules are arbitrary." "That's part of the fun," Zoe explained. "It's not just about winning. It's about the challenge, the strategy." "But there is a most efficient way to play," Trelor argued. Zoe laughed. "If that were true, the same person would win every time. But humans have been playing chess for centuries, and we still surprise each other." Trelor's eyes adjusted, focusing closely on her face. "Surprise is valued by humans?" "Of course," Zoe said. "Predictability gets boring. We like to be surprised, well, in good ways at least." For a moment, Trelor seemed troubled. Then he moved his pawn forward. I think I begin to understand why the council is so interested in your species. Oh? Zoe moved her bishop. And why is that? Treller hesitated. Because you are different. Most species we encounter are much like us. Logical. Predictable. He looked up at her. Safe. The way he said the word made Zoe pause. And we're not safe? Before Treller could answer, a chime sounded, indicating the end of recreation period. We will continue this game tomorrow, Treller said, standing quickly. I have enjoyed our conversation. As he left, Zoe had the distinct feeling that something important had just happened. Something beyond a simple game of chess. That night, Commander Olivia Wright called the human team together in a secure room she had swept for listening devices. Edward has found something we need to discuss, she said gravely. The Sarkosians aren't just exchanging culture with us. They're studying us, intensively. Edward explained his discoveries about the covert testing. They're afraid of us, Greg said, looking troubled. But why? They're technologically superior in every way. I might have a clue, Zoe said. She told them about her conversation with Treller. He called us unsafe. I think they see our unpredictability as a threat. Sam, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. In their language, the word they use for humans translates literally to the unpredictables. I thought it was a simple descriptor, but maybe it's a category, a warning. The 5 humans looked at each other as the implications sank in. So what do we do? Zoe asked. Olivia's expression was grim. We keep smiling, keep cooperating, and we start doing some studying of our own. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of representatives from different species sat in rising tiers around a central platform. Some looked almost human. Others were so different it was hard to tell which part was their face. Sierval stood on the platform, his report complete. He waited as the council members discussed his findings among themselves. The chamber hummed with the soft sounds of various translation devices. The council leader, a tall being with crystalline features, finally spoke. Your report is disturbing, lead researcher. These humans seem more unpredictable than we feared. They are complex, Sierval admitted, but also fascinating. Their unpredictability leads to creative solutions we would not consider. A representative from the Morrican species leaned forward. We have seen this before. The last unpredictable species nearly destroyed half the galaxy before they were contained. Humans are not the Vex, Sierval argued. They show remarkable cooperation despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, added another council member. That makes them even more dangerous. The containment option must be considered. Sierval felt a strange sensation in his chest. Was this what humans called worry? Containment would be premature. We have only just begun to understand them. The council leader's crystalline face caught the light as she turned to address the chamber. We will continue observation, increase testing protocols. If the humans show signs of following the Vex pattern, containment procedures will begin immediately. As the meeting ended, Sierval found himself troubled by the decision. Containment meant sealing Earth off from the rest of the galaxy. Forever. Treller paced in his small room aboard the research vessel. What he was considering would end his career, possibly his life. But after weeks with the humans, especially Zoe, he couldn't stay silent. The door chimed. Zoe entered, looking concerned. You wanted to see me urgently? Treller checked that his privacy field was active. What I am about to tell you violates every protocol of the Galactic Council. Zoe's expression grew serious. I'm listening. Your planet is in danger, Treller said. The Council sees humanity as a threat. There are other species watching Earth besides us. Some are advocating for containment. Containment? Zoe asked. What does that mean? A barrier around your solar system. No one goes in, no one comes out. Forever. Zoe sat down heavily. Why? What have we done? Nothing yet, Treller explained. It is what they fear you might do. Long ago, there was another species like yours, unpredictable, emotional, creative. They were called the Vex. When they discovered the wider galaxy, He paused, searching for the right words. They disagreed with how things were done. War followed, terrible war. And they think we'll do the same? Zoe asked incredulously. The Council fears what it cannot predict, Treller said simply. Back on Earth, strange things were happening. Dr. Peter Nelson, a leading nuclear physicist, stared blankly at his computer. He had been working on a breakthrough in fusion technology. Now he couldn't remember any of it. I don't understand, he told his assistant. It's just gone from my head. Similar reports came from labs around the world. Key scientists reported memory gaps, always about their most important work. At the same time, military bases reported system failures. Weather stations detected unusual patterns near important installations. Crops failed in specific regions. None of it seemed connected, unless you knew what to look for. The human exchange team returned to Earth after 3 months in space. They brought knowledge, new technology, and growing suspicion. Commander Olivia Wright stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her face grim. I believe we are being tested, she told the gathered leaders. The incidents around the world are too coordinated to be coincidence. That's a serious accusation, said General Harris. The Sarkozians have shared valuable technology with us. Limited technology, Olivia corrected. They're careful about what they give us. What do you suggest? Asked another council member. Prepare, Olivia said simply. Quietly. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. The council voted to begin secret preparations, just in case. Dr. Edward Clark spent long hours in his lab, studying the brain scans the Sarkozians had taken. At first, he hadn't seen anything unusual. Then he noticed a pattern. When presented with problems, human brains lit up in unique ways. The neural pathways constantly reformed, creating new connections. The Sarkozian brains in comparison data showed stable, predictable patterns. It's our neural plasticity, he muttered to himself. We rewire our brains all the time, he called. Professor Sam Bennett immediately. Sam, I need everything you've decoded from their language about neural function. Sam arrived an hour later with data files. They don't talk about brains much, he said, but I found references to something called stable thought patterns that seem important to them. Together, they pieced together a theory. The Sarkozians and most galactic species had evolved toward neural stability, predictable thought patterns. Humans hadn't. Our brains remained adaptable, constantly changing. They see it as chaos, Edward said, but it's actually our greatest strength. Greg Phillips used his diplomatic connections to speak with representatives from other nations. He asked casual questions about unusual events. A pattern emerged. Every country had experienced similar incidents: memory loss among key researchers, technological failures, weather anomalies. They're testing our responses, he realized, seeing how we handle crises. Zoe Martinez couldn't sleep. Treller's warning haunted her. She got up and began sketching a device on her tablet. If humanity was being judged based on brain function, perhaps they needed to understand the human brain better. Her design combined Sarkozian scanning technology with human neural interface concepts. It would allow more direct communication, not just words but concepts, emotions. If they could feel what we feel, she whispered to herself, maybe they wouldn't fear us so much. Sam Bennett worked late into the night, translating more of the Sarkozian language database. He found a phrase that appeared repeatedly: the last war. It was always connected to references about the unpredictable ones. Another phrase caught his attention: neural purity. The context suggested it was something highly valued by the Galactic Council. Sam sent a message to the rest of the team. I think I know why they fear us. It's not just that we're unpredictable. They believe unpredictability is a form of corruption. They've engineered it out of themselves. On the Sarkozian research vessel, Sirval reviewed the latest test results. Earth was experiencing carefully controlled crises in various regions. So far, the humans were responding with remarkable cooperation. Instead of fighting each other for resources, they were sharing. Instead of panicking, they were organizing. It wasn't what the council had expected. It wasn't what history had taught them to expect from unpredictable species. They are not the Vex, he said quietly to himself. But would the council see the difference? Or had fear already decided humanity's fate? He made a decision. The truth had to be revealed. To the humans, and to the council, even if it cost him everything. The Galactic Council moved to the next phase of testing. No longer content with small isolated incidents, they engineered 3 major crises to hit Earth simultaneously. In the American Midwest, a mysterious plant disease spread rapidly across farmlands. Crops withered and died within days. Food reserves began to dwindle. Across Asia and Europe, communication systems failed. Cell towers stopped working. Internet connections went down. People found themselves suddenly cut off from information. Along coastlines worldwide, unusual seismic activity triggered tsunami warnings. Millions evacuated inland, creating refugee situations in major cities. The council expected chaos. They predicted riots, violence, and societal breakdown. Their models showed it was the logical outcome when unpredictable beings faced resource scarcity. What they saw instead confused them. In the farmlands of Iowa, Linda Baker watched her corn crop die. 50 years of farming, and she had never seen anything like it. The news said it was happening everywhere. When the government scientists arrived, they brought little hope. No known treatment would work. The disease was unlike anything in their databases. Linda's neighbor, Frank Wilson, drove over that evening. "I've got seed potatoes in my cellar," he said. "They grow fast and might resist whatever this is." By morning, farmers across the county were sharing seeds, equipment, and knowledge. They didn't wait for solutions from above. They adapted. City dwellers drove out to help plant new crops. Universities opened their experimental greenhouses. People with small gardens donated what they could. It wasn't enough to replace what was lost, but it was a start. And no one went hungry. When the communication systems failed, people didn't panic as expected. They got creative. In New York City, neighbors who had never spoken before now talked face to face. Community centers became information hubs. Bicycle messengers carried news between neighborhoods. In rural areas, ham radio operators became local heroes, creating networks of information. Old technologies were dusted off. New ones were invented on the spot. Students at universities built simple radio transmitters from spare parts. Neighborhood watch groups organized systems to check on the elderly and vulnerable. Instead of turning on each other, people turned toward each other. The coastal evacuations could have been disastrous. Millions of people needed shelter, food, and water. But something unexpected happened. Inland communities opened their homes. Schools became shelters. Restaurants fed strangers for free. There were problems, of course. Arguments broke out. Supplies ran short, but violence remained minimal. Cooperation was the norm, not the exception. From their vessels in orbit, the Galactic Council observers watched in confusion. "This defies all predictive models," said one analyst to Sirval. "No species responds this way to multiple crises." Sirval studied the data carefully. "Perhaps our models are wrong." The council was divided on what the human response meant. Some saw it as evidence that humans were even more dangerous than feared. Their ability to adapt and cooperate under pressure could make them unstoppable if they ever became aggressive. Others, including Sirval, argued that humans showed a unique strength that could benefit the galaxy. Their unpredictability led to innovation and resilience, not just chaos. Treller stood before the council, his stance showing unusual confidence for a junior researcher. "I have spent more time with humans than most. Their unpredictability is not random. It stems from their emotional connections to each other." The council leaders' crystalline features showed no emotion. The Vex made similar arguments before. They began their war against order. The humans are not the Vex, Treller insisted. They don't seek to destroy order. They create new kinds of order we haven't imagined. His words fell on deaf ears. The council voted. Containment would begin. Olivia Wright stared at the satellite images in the underground command center. There, she pointed. And there. Those aren't normal objects in orbit. The United Earth Defense Team gathered around the screen. The images showed small, nearly invisible structures positioned at key points around Earth's orbit. Monitoring stations? Suggested one general. Or worse, Olivia said grimly. We need to know what they're doing up there. In his lab, Edward Clark had a breakthrough. Working with brain tissue samples, he discovered something remarkable. The neural connections, he explained to his team. In Sarcosians, they're fixed, stable. In humans, they're constantly changing based on experience. He pulled up comparative scans. Look at these pathways. When a Sarcosian faces a problem, they use established neural circuits. When we face a problem, we create new pathways. It's why we can adapt so quickly. One researcher looked up. So our unpredictability comes from our brain structure? Not just structure, Edward said excitedly. Function. We have a unique connection between our emotional and logical centers. They don't compete, they work together. Zoe Martinez finished the prototype of her communication device. It combined Sarcosian technology with human neural interface design. The device would allow direct sharing of concepts and feelings beyond language. Will it work? Greg Phillips asked as they prepared to test it. In theory, Zoe said. If it does, it could let us share how we think, not just what we think. They might finally understand us. Sam Bennett had joined them, bringing his latest translations. I found something important, he said. References to the Great Purification. From what I can tell, most species in the Galactic Council have engineered their own evolution. What do you mean? Zoe asked. They deliberately removed traits they considered inefficient, Sam explained. Emotional responses, creativity, individual variation. They see these as wasteful, dangerous. They made themselves predictable, Greg realized. On purpose. And they can't understand why we wouldn't want the same, Sam added. On the main Sarcosian vessel, Shirval received the containment orders with a heavy heart. A fleet of ships was already entering the solar system, prepared to establish a permanent barrier around Earth. No human would ever leave their home system. No outside influence would ever reach them again. They would be preserved as they were, a curious dead end in galactic evolution. Shirval sent a private message to Treller, who had returned to Earth under the pretense of final observations. The decision is made. Containment begins in 30 Earth hours, I'm sorry. Treller's response was immediate. Help me stop this, the humans deserve to know the truth. Shirval hesitated only briefly before replying. I will help. He had spent 200 cycles studying intelligent life across the galaxy. Now, for the first time, he was willing to risk everything for one species. It was an unpredictable decision. Perhaps he had learned something from the humans after all. The containment fleet entered the solar system in perfect formation. 100 ships, each larger than any vessel humans had ever built, moved with precise coordination. They began positioning themselves at strategic points to create a barrier that would seal Earth off from the rest of the galaxy forever. On Earth, Treller met with the human team in an underground facility. His normal calm was gone, replaced by an urgency that surprised them. We have less than 24 hours, he told them. The containment has begun. Can't you talk to them? Greg asked. Make them understand we're not a threat? Treller's large eyes adjusted, focusing more intensely. The Council fears what it does not understand, and they cannot understand you because of what they have done to themselves. What exactly have they done? Edward asked. Treller hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. The truth is not in our official records, it is almost forgotten, but some of us still keep the old histories. He activated a small device that projected images in the air. Long ago, most advanced species were like humans, emotional, creative, unpredictable. This led to conflicts, but also to great advances. Then came the Great Enhancement. The images showed beings willingly entering machines emerging changed. Species after species chose to modify themselves. They removed emotions they considered dangerous, standardized their neural patterns, created perfect, predictable societies. Sam leaned forward. Like the Vex you mentioned before, they refused this enhancement. The Vex were like humans, Treller explained. They valued their diversity and unpredictability. When they discovered what other species had done to themselves, they tried to stop it from spreading further. The Council called this an act of war. So the Vex weren't trying to destroy the galaxy, Olivia realized. They were trying to save it from becoming sterile. Yes, Treller said simply. And they failed. The Council fears you will follow the same path when you learn the truth. Zoe touched her prototype communication device. That's why we need this, to show them how we think, that our unpredictability isn't a threat. Edward nodded excitedly. The neural scans show our brains use emotion and logic together. We need to let them experience that. But how? Greg asked. They're in orbit. We can't reach them. Olivia smiled for the first time in days. Actually, we can. The plan came together quickly. Each person contributed their piece of the solution. Olivia coordinated with Earth space agencies to prepare a small, fast ship. It won't match their technology, but it will get us up there. Edward refined their understanding of the neural differences. Their brains are locked in stable patterns. They literally cannot think in new ways without help. Sam translated everything into the Council's formal language. The exact words matter. They're very precise about language. Greg prepared a message for the galactic species, not just their leaders. We need to reach the people behind the Council. Zoe worked with Treller to improve her communication device. This will bridge the gap between our minds and theirs. Within hours, they were ready. The small team, Olivia, Edward, Greg, Sam, Zoe, and Treller, boarded the ship. Sirval had promised to meet them in orbit and help them reach the Council. They launched. They could see the containment barrier beginning to form. A faint shimmer surrounded the Earth as energy fields connected between the alien ships. We might be the last humans to ever leave Earth, Sam said quietly. Or the first to truly join the galaxy, Zoe replied. Sirval kept his word. His research vessel met them beyond Earth's atmosphere. Using his clearance, he brought them to the command ship where the Council leader directed the containment. They will not listen, he warned as they prepared to enter the Council chamber. Their minds are set. Then we won't just talk, Zoe said, holding up her device. We'll share. The Council chamber fell silent as the humans entered with Sirval and Treller. The leader's crystalline features showed no emotion as she addressed them. Humans, your presence here is unexpected. The containment is for your own protection as well as ours. Greg stepped forward. We understand you fear us, but you don't truly know us. We have studied your species extensively, the leader replied. You've observed us, Edward corrected, but you haven't understood us. How could you, when you've removed the very parts of yourselves that make us human? Murmurs spread through the Council. The leader's voice sharpened. The Great Enhancement freed us from chaos, from the tyranny of emotion and unreason. It also cost you something precious, Sam said. The ability to adapt, to change, to create new things. We have perfect societies, another Council member argued. No war, no conflict, no waste, and no growth, Zoe said. She held up her device. Please, before you lock us away forever, truly understand what you're containing. The leader hesitated, then nodded once. Proceed. Zoe activated the device. It connected to the Council chamber's systems, broadcasting not just words or images, but the actual neural patterns of human thought. For the first time in thousands of years, the Council members experienced what they had engineered out of themselves, the beautiful chaos of emotion intertwined with logic, the spark of intuition, the warmth of empathy, the leap of imagination. Some recoiled, Others leaned forward, drawn to what they had lost. Then Girval stepped forward. I have studied thousands of species across the galaxy. Most follow the same patterns, think the same thoughts, because we made ourselves that way. We called it perfection, but it was stagnation. He gestured to the humans. They remind us of what we once were, what we could be again. Treller joined him. The Vex tried to force their way. The humans only ask for understanding. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some members demanded immediate containment. Others argued for a new approach. The leader raised her hand for silence. For a long moment she studied the humans. Then she touched her own temple, where Zoe's device had shown her a new way of thinking. The containment will be suspended, she announced. For now. It wasn't victory. It wasn't acceptance. But it was a beginning. 1 year later, Earth had changed again. The exchange program had expanded. Humans visited other worlds, while representatives from dozens of species came to Earth. Some alien visitors chose to experience human neural patterns through Zoe's now refined device. A few went further, choosing to reverse parts of the great enhancement that had limited their minds for so long. It wasn't easy. After thousands of years of predictability, chaos was frightening, but it was also exhilarating. In a garden on the rebuilt space station, Girval sat with Edward, watching Earth in the distance. The Council fears what might happen, Girval admitted. Not all species want to change. They don't have to, Edward said. Diversity is what makes humanity strong. It should be the same for the galaxy. Girval nodded, his eyes adjusting to take in the view. We wanted to understand humans until we learned the truth. And what truth is that? Edward asked. That, in trying to perfect ourselves, we lost what made us truly alive, Girval said. You showed us that understanding isn't about prediction. It's about accepting what cannot be predicted. Between them, a small plant from Earth grew in an alien, pot, unpredictable, beautiful, alive.